Hey, it's Coach Anderson here from Mississippi Public Broadcasting Online, U.S. History from 1877 to present. Today we're going to pick up with Unit 5, the Progressive Movement, and we're going to look at Lesson 4, Women's Suffrage, a Movement Divided. Now, when we're talking about the turn of the century, one of the things that the United States of America, of course, kind of turns to, there were only a select group, of course, Americans, of course, that could vote. Freedmen, of course, who met the qualifications that weren't disenfranchised, of course, by the Jim Crow laws. And then, of course, white males, of course, in the country. The one significant group, of course, that was left out, of course, was American females. So American women, of course, didn't have the right to vote, but it was something, of course, that they thought that they were legally entitled to. Because if you think about it, the 14th Amendment, of course, and we'll talk about that in a few seconds, strong person, but before we get to the 14th Amendment, we'll talk about, who were involved in the movement. Strong personalities dominated the fight for women's suffrage. Probably the greatest hindrance to women gaining the right to vote was the lack of a unified strategy to gain the vote by women. So what happens is you basically have two movements. You have one group of women on one side, another group on the other side, and they have different ideas about the ways to go about gaining the right to vote. The accepted view by women, though, overall, was that this shouldn't even be an issue. Because what the 14th Amendment did, of course, it was one of those reconstructions amendments that was passed, of course, after the end of slavery. The 13th Amendment outlawing slavery, of course, the 14th Amendment giving, people that were naturally born in this country or that were naturalized citizens, and made them citizens of the United States of America. And so women felt like they fell in that particular group. So when you look at women falling in that particular group, because the 15th Amendment, if you think about it, right after the 14th Amendment gave African American men who were now citizens the right to vote. So it didn't say or specify in the 14th Amendment whether you had to be male or female. It simply said that if you were born in the United States of America or you were naturalized and became a citizen, then you should be afforded all, of course, the rights of a citizen. Or one of the rights of a citizen, of course, is being able to vote. So African American men, of course, could vote after the passage of the 14th Amendment and the passage of the 15th Amendment, because they were guaranteed citizenship. So since there were no legal restrictions, of course, on citizens, and nothing that said in the code that women were disqualified because of their gender, they felt like they should have the right to vote. So the accepted view was that by women leaders, what the 14th Amendment guaranteed all persons born or naturalized in the United States of America citizenship before citizens should be able to vote, according to the 15th Amendment. But that's what the Constitution says. That's what the amendment to the Constitution says. The reality doesn't necessarily meet what the Constitution says. The two prevailing strategies were suffrage through passage of the amendment, which was more of a national approach, or gaining suffrage by getting state legislators to grant suffrage on the state and local level first. Same goal, different ways of achieving or reaching it. In other words, you have one group of American women that believed that the only way, of course, to gain the right to vote, of course, was to get the government, of course, to pass a national amendment. And that amendment, of course, to the Constitution would guarantee the right to vote. Now, that does happen, but it initially was the least effective approach. The more popular approach, of course, was to get state legislatures, of course, to pass suffrage, of course, for women, so that they can, women can vote in state elections, of course, and local elections. And in places like Wyoming and out west, where they didn't have a significant number of women, it was a very attractive carrot to get women, of course, to move into those areas. So if you were a woman and you wanted the right to vote, move to Wyoming, with all the winds, of course, on the plains. So what you could do, of course, is move to Wyoming, and a lot of, state legislatures in the western part of the United States of America did indeed grant women the right to vote first. What we want you to do, of course, is take a little bit of a deeper look and a little bit more about the history, of course, of women's suffrage. And what we want you to do is be mindful to pay attention to the key players, the language used, and where the support for each group originated. PBS Learning Media has provided an excellent resource video and activity on the women's suffrage movement. Students view the video and then complete the background reading and answer the discussion questions. And once you've completed it, the activities convert the file, of course, into PDF, submit it to your teacher to be graded. At this time, we will pause and allow students to access the video in the video description. To view the video and complete the activities on women's suffrage, a movement divided. Remember, as you go through and look at this particular video and complete the activities, it was one movement and two strategies. Make sure after you complete the video that you complete the activities, of course, that are aligned with the video, and turn those into your teacher in the form of a PDF once you complete it. Good luck and enjoy the movement. Both strategies were successful now, and according to the video, you'll see that. But as early on, but as you were able to see, the real movement in women's suffrage doesn't happen until the creation of the National American Women's Suffrage Association in 1890, when one voice stated one message. Well, we hope that you were able to gain some insights, of course, into women's suffrage. And what we want you to understand is this here. Sometimes, of course, what's guaranteed by law doesn't necessarily mean that that's what you get. And in looking at the case of American women, they made a very good case before the turn of the century in 1900, stating that they should be given the right to vote based on what the law says. But what the law says is not what the law says, according to the people, of course, in power. So the 14th Amendment, even though it guaranteed, people born in the country who are naturalized in the country to become citizens, and it made no statement, of course, of women not being citizens or not being granted citizenship because they met the requirements according to law, but they didn't necessarily gain the fruits, of course, of that citizenship. So what we want you to do, of course, is to think about the things that we've put forth and what you learned in PBS Learning Media. And remember what we said, don't take my word for it. Don't take PBS Learning Media's word for it. Now, it's probably good to listen to us sometime, but what we want you to do, of course, is to reach your own conclusion, draw, and do your own research, because remember, it's America's history, which means it's your history. And you should be able to draw your own conclusions. And with that, we'll see you next time.